As the title says, this video is because I was asked for clarification on how the Panzerfaust 30 Klein worked, and the firing mechanism at least. When I made it originally, I did have some cuts in that, so this is more of a clarification for it. You have to watch the other video, and with this one here, it sort of gives you a bit more information. Alright, so to start off with, we'll just go over the parts. This is the back end of it, as you've seen in the other video. This normally has a spring in it. I don't have one that goes in here right now, but this has a spring in it which gives it back pressure, so it always is pushing back. I don't have the tube anymore because our government basically just for the time being has banned anything over 20 millimeters. So since they didn't say whether that included black powder devices, I basically disassembled everything, and now there is no such thing as the assembled tube anymore. Anyways, so the tube itself was basically, as you saw in the other video, just for holding the parts in. So you had the sight in the front of it, then you basically had the firing pin, which now you see properly because I didn't have the firing pin, the point on it before in the other video. The push button for firing it, if it stays focused, and the tube for cocking the whole thing and for putting it in safe. This is just a little cap on the end. There was a screw in here that just shows for the safe position and the fire position. So when it's in the safe position, this cutout here is aligned with the top of the tube. So there's a pin that's in here, and the spring is behind the pin. So if you were to push forward on it, the spring is being compressed, so this pushes forward, and then when it releases, it comes back. So that's where you get that pressure from in the first video. The pin that's there goes through here and pushes on the spring too. As you see the way it's designed here, you're able to push it, and then when you want to fire it, you're able to turn it 90 degrees, and it'll stay like this. When it's in this direction here, there's two things. The hole here, which is where the flame from the primer comes through, will be, instead of being aligned with the side of it, will now be aligned with the bottom of the tube, which goes through the hole into the main pipe and ignites the charge. So if sideways, there is no chance that it's going to fire because the hole is not lined up with the actual charge underneath, the propelling charge. It has to be turned sideways. The other thing about it is when it's turned, as you could see, the firing pin stays like this in the chamber, and with the spring pressure, it sits like this. There's no way for it to go deep enough to impact the primer. When you've pushed it back with this, so by cocking it, you've pushed it back by pushing this forward like this against the spring, and then the spring back here releases, and it looks like that. When you do your 90-degree turn, it turns this to, as you can see, there are longer cutouts here versus the short ones here. Now the firing pin could actually go further in and impact the primer. Inside this is a metal block with a primer on it. This is made out of shell just because I didn't have anything else. And you'd have the primer here, and this is lined up with a hole in the bottom here. So when it's in here, it goes right to the back here. And as you see, they're lined up. Inside, you would have the primer sitting. You can't see it because it's dark, but anyways. The primer would be close enough for the firing pin to impact it once it's at this point here. The last part I have to talk about is the firing pin. So when I was talking about this here, when it's closed like this, you can't push because of that. So you cannot actually arm it because that's like a safety for you. If you go to push the button forward to cock this, it impacts here, and you can't push it far enough to lock into the button here. Right now the button's locked, but that's just because I want to hold the springs in place. The button itself is basically, when you push down, I'll show you what it's made like. Alright, on one side there's a cutout completely through. You see a little spring that's in there. And on the other side there's a partial cutout. That partial cutout lines up with the cutout on this when it's cocked. So I'll take the springs off. Normally you would have this right here. It's pushed in and it locks into place like that. So your button goes up in the tube. That's what holds the button in place. Usually it's held up straight because of the pipe itself has a hole in it. When you go to fire it, by pushing down, it pushes the firing pin up so that the cutout that's there no longer impacts the side of the hole. So it goes from being locked to pushed down, and when it's pushed down far enough and the thing's properly lined up, it slides. So the springs that are here will pull this and allow it to pull past that. So the whole arming of this starts with, I'll put a couple springs on now. This is going to take more arms or hands or whatever you want to call it than I've got here, but we could try. So this goes here. All right. Originally it starts off like this, with this down. With it down, trying to push it, as I said before, will impact here. So by lifting up the front sight, it leaves a space in the front for the firing pin to continue going through. So now, you go to arm this, kept like this. You push forward until the button locks, like you see there. Now the spring that's in here would push this back And now it's able to be, this button could be pushed now, but if it fires, it's just going to hit here and not hit the primer because it's too far back due to the shorter cutout here. So now you've got it sitting like this. You're ready to fire. You turn the knob in the back 90 degrees. Well, it's 90 degrees this way because this would lock in. So it goes from here 90 degrees. Now your longer cutout is lined up with the actual firing pin here, which means it's able to go further back and impact that primer that you saw in there. So now it's able to. You've got that space here. You push this button here, it releases the firing pin, and the firing pin goes back, goes through here, impacts the primer, ignites the primer. The primer is blocked off in the back, so it's basically an L-shaped hole. So ignition comes through the bottom hole here and ignites the package basically of, or cylinder of black powder that's behind the round. And that's what launches a projectile. So as I said, it's not a very difficult system. It's just a little bit complex to manufacture compared to the 60s and 100s. And the 30 gross I think actually used. Yeah, 30 gross used the same mechanism as this. Anyways, let's see if we could get this to focus again. There we go. So I hope that answered. If there's any questions, just leave them in the comments. And as I said, it's all basic stuff. That's just a piece of sheet metal, and it physically blocks a firing pin from going far enough forward to lock. And while it's in the safe mode, as I said before, when it's sideways like this, you can't turn it to make it fire because the firing pin itself keeps it from turning. When it's in the tube, it's all lined up, but basically it's like a key. It's locked. So it has to be cocked first. This has to be it to come back, and then you could turn it. And when you turn it, now it's ready to fire. Anyways, I hope that explained it better. And if not, like I said, leave the questions in the comment section. I wish I still had the tube, but like I said, governments are governments, and in this case, this one doesn't like anyone who owns firearms, apparently. Anyways, thanks for watching, and eventually I'll be back with new content. It's just that I'm busy right now with work and setting up my house, so hopefully I'll get another video out soon. I'm in a process right now of doing that, so thanks for your patience. And either way, anyways, have a good one.